Hey everyone, Conor here for Forge Intelligence, and today's topic's going to be an interesting one. Something that I've dabbled around with a bit, especially for clients that have gone down this avenue. And I think it's just an interesting topic in general, and that's hypertrophy for powerlifters. So today we're going to talk about how hypertrophy training may be different for a powerlifter versus a bodybuilder, as well as the main mistakes I think I see powerlifters do when they shift their training towards more hypertrophy-based stimulus. Right, where do we even start in this one? So I think I'll very quickly just go over a topic, which is hypertrophy important for powerlifters? Yes. Okay, moving on. So, anyway, so I think the most common mistake I see is the only variable that powerlifters may do, especially if they're more in the amateur ranks of program design, is shifting the reps from a lower number to a higher number. Boom, that's the periodization plan. I think there's a lot more that can be done. I think there's certain tools that could be exploited more. I'm going to talk about things like variation and specificity and when things apply versus when they don't. And yeah, just some overall things you see. So the first thing, probably not the most important thing, but something that I think is something worth considering in an off-season, is how you perform your exercises. So the mind-muscle connection has been something that has been talked about. It used to be considered bro science, in some circles at least. Some people just say, fucking move the weight, something's moving the weight. But in time, it's starting to become more clear, especially with certain evidence from Brad Schoenfeld, that the mind-muscle connection, with all other things equated, does increase growth more than a non-mind-muscle connection mentality, I guess. I think also having good mind-muscle connection for powerlifter may help you at least be aware of what certain muscles feel like, what tension feels like in certain areas of lift. Knowing where you feel tension, for example, in a squat of, okay, what am I feeling in my midsection? What am I feeling in my glutes, my quads? You can sort of tell you the ratios and where your bar path is without looking in the mirror and stuff like that. If you're at a meet, you're not going to know this stuff. So I think the proprioceptive tools of mind-muscle connection is very handy. Particularly handy for those who almost, I guess, disrespect the eccentric to a degree, which I guess is part of the sport in certain senses for powerlifters. For example, we do a deadlift. A deadlift, particularly close to the meet, might just simply drop the weight. I mean, the eccentric has got potentially some fatigue, is where a lot of the pro-inflammatory stuff happens, and each eccentric you do, in a weird way, cuts into what the amount of work you can do and recover from, especially closer towards a meet, where getting rid of fatigue is integral. If you look at squats, people can dive bomb. Bench press, to a degree, they can dive bomb. I guess you got the pause and stuff. That's one thing I sort of shift away, which sort of ties into the mind-muscle connection part. Okay, as for powerlifters, I think there's a lot of value towards addressing weaknesses. So I think one thing I do with all my powerlifting clients is look at how they've gone in certain lifts. Usually there's video footage. It is an Instagram world, after all, and finding out where they struggle in lift and then tackle the relative muscles that are very specific to the area. Yes, you can do certain isometrics and blah, blah, blah to get temporarily stronger, but there's nothing like the value of actually having more tissue to move stuff and then getting better as you get closer to the meet, blah, blah, blah. So I think addressing weaknesses is something that you should do in your program and sort of cater hypertrophy towards your weaker areas. Having said that, there is actually some value to making your strong points even stronger if it's going to help you. In fact, I'll really just a quick side tangent. I think across the training career, it may actually benefit you in the beginner to intermediate stages to actually focus more on your strong points as opposed to weaknesses. For example, your quads are too strong for your glutes, whatever, in a squat. It may actually help your total for a certain amount of time to just really emphasize the stuff you're really good at and get those quads bigger and stronger. But there will become a time, especially as you're more advanced, you will be held back more by your limiting factor. Right, next part is how you look at things. So obviously, powerlifting is a big numbers base. With hypertrophy, volume obviously becomes more important, and how you periodize across the mesocycle might change a little bit. So you might start to do things like periodizing with reps in reserve. You might start to do things with maybe still keeping intensity on the way up, but maybe a slighter nudge. For example, not even using percentages here, maybe just weight in the bar. Let's say you typically go 5 kilos up a week in a squat. Maybe you'd make that 2.5 because there's more volume and fatigue coming in. Fuck. I'm going to keep that in. I don't know if you guys can hear the thunder. But so how you look at things may change. So how you look at numbers may differ. So typically powerlifter, the main thing you do is, decrease volume potentially, especially as you're close towards the meet, and increase intensity pretty aggressively. Now if the intensity jumps, instead of maybe 5 kilos up a week, you could do the 2.5 kilos up a week because more fatigue, blah, blah, blah. You can periodize things such as reps in reserve. You can also periodize things such as sets across a week, which is usually a very big one, very powerful volume manipulator. But for the biggest mistake I see for powerlifters in a hypertrophy plan is not playing the variability card, the variance. I love specificity. I think it's great. And there's a lot of truth to, okay, you wanted the muscles to be bigger in the squat, then there's only one way of knowing which muscles are going to get bigger in the squat, and that's to squat and squat for more reps and blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's sort of specific, but variance has been shown to have great novelty effect for hypertrophy, and I believe it's a tool that hasn't been used too much. So you can switch your squats even from low bars to maybe if you're after quads, high bar, pause, Olympic style or whatever. Or even chuck in more movements. So things like leg presses won't be too weird.